through the New World Order system under the auspices of the United Nations. Antiochus IV waged war against the Jews, as we can see in Daniel chapter 8 and verse 25. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. So Antiochus IV deceived through peace. That's a prophecy, that the deception that comes upon Israel in the end of days will be through peace. And so Israel is being pressured to accept a PLO state in the name of peace and appeasement of the nations. 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verses 29 through 31. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judea, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude. And he spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. And so let's see how the nation of Israel is submitting themselves to the United Nations. And we're going to look and see how the peace agreement that Israel is making with her Arab neighbors is based upon UN resolutions. The peace process and the peace treaties which the United States is promoting and advancing in the Middle East between Israel and the PLO, Israel and her Arab neighbors, is based upon UN resolutions. Let's look at the background of the birth of the modern day state of Israel and see and understand their present situation. The first Zionist Congress was in Basel, Switzerland. In 1897, Theodor Herzl called the first Zionist Congress at Basel, Switzerland. It opened on August the 29th, 1897, and was attended by some 204 participants from 17 countries. At this time, the World Zionist Organization was established, and Herzl became its first president. Here he officially launched the Zionist movement with a specific statement of purpose. The object of Zionism is to establish for the Jewish people a publicly and legally assured home in Palestine. Chaim Weizmann took up the baton from Theodor Herzl through what he helped achieve to bring victory to the Allies in World War I. After Herzl's death, the new leader of Zionism became Chaim Weizmann. Because of World War I, Britain had a need that Weizmann was able to meet. When the Allies' supply of acetone to produce munitions began to run out, which was previously imported from Germany, the British staff called on Weizmann to find some substitute. Following a 2-year project, his team developed a superior synthetic that made a considerable contribution to the Allied war effort. The result was what was known as the Balfour Declaration, November the 2nd, 1917. And the Balfour Declaration reads, Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to me and approved by the Cabinet. His Majesty's government views with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which can prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights or political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. So ultimately, this resulted in what's known as the British Mandate. The British Mandate was given international approval by the Council of the League of Nations on June the 28th, 1919. And from the British Mandate, there came to be the dividing up of the Middle East into some of the countries that we recognize today. The British created Transjordan in 1922. You see, originally, the British mandate of Palestine was to be the area that you see as green. But because of Arab opposition, much of what was originally meant to be a land of Palestine was given over to a country that became known as Jordan, or at that time Transjordan. However, before its final sanction on September the 29th, 1922, the homeland projected for the Jews had been reduced to exclude Transjordan when Great Britain created the state of Transjordan under the kingship of Abdullah ibn Hussein. In order to satisfy the Arabs, land was given for peace. And ultimately, through the struggles that was a part of World War II, following World War II, there came to be what is known as the United Nations Partition Plan of 1947, or the plan that the United Nations had for the land of Palestine or Israel. The General Assembly of the United Nations voted on November the 29th, 1947 to support partitioning of the land of Palestine or Israel. The vote was 33-13, mainly the Western Bloc against the Muslims and Arab and Asian blocs. 11 nations abstained, including Britain. It was to be implemented at the termination of the British mandate or the British control of the area, which was May the 14th, 1948. However, the Arabs said, why do we need to share this land with the Jews? It should all be ours. So the Arabs rejected the partitioning of the area into a Jewish state, an Arab state with Jerusalem as an international city, and with the end of the British mandate, went to war with Israel, wherein Israel declared itself a nation on May the 14th, 1948. So UN Resolution 181 decreed that Jerusalem would be an international city. The partition plan vote became UN Resolution 181. In Part 3, Section A of UN Resolution 181, the city of Jerusalem was established as a corpus separatum under a special international regime and shall be administered by the United Nations. Thus, the plan of the United Nations was for Jerusalem to become an international city. And ultimately, in 1949, we have what is known as the Armistice Map of Israel. The 1949 Armistice Agreement are a set of agreements signed between Israel and its neighbors, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. On February the 24th, 1949, Egypt was given the Gaza Strip, is what you see in yellow. On April the 3rd, 1949, Jordan maintained the West Bank, known as the Green Line, in East Jerusalem, which you see in green. Now, the irony of ironies is the peace that is being negotiated, which the quartet, that is the United States, the United Nations, Europe, and Russia, wants to ultimately see is this 1949 map. And that being the case, the Arabs rejected this solution at that time, and now it's being said that they will accept it, and it's being proclaimed as the Great Peace Plan. And what's really happening is the Western elite and the United States government is trying to ensure that any peace agreements that are made in the Middle East is done under the authority of the resolutions that were passed by the United Nations. Israel obtained the Sinai and the Gaza Strip from Egypt. And this was in 1967 with the Six-Day War. In 2 days, the Egyptian army in the Sinai was virtually wiped out, leaving Israel to have the Gaza Strip. And also through this war, Israel then captured the Golan Heights from Syria. And Israel obtained the West Bank and Jerusalem from Jordan. And it's from these events that the controversy surrounded regarding the Arabs wanting to get this land back. So ultimately in 1979 there was a peace agreement made with Egypt and they got the Sinai back, and rather than the West Bank going back to Jordan, who originally had it, it's now being proposed as a Palestinian state. And so the lands that was occupied or won by Israel from the Six-Day War of 1967 has become a source of contention even to this day, and is a part of biblical prophecy in fulfilling the controversy of Zion, which will reach its climax in a period of time known as the Tribulation period. Following the Six-Day War of 1967, where Israel gained control of these territories that was previously under Arab governments, there was the passing of UN Security Council Resolution 242. And so UN Resolution 242 is a peace and security agreement. Remember, we're told that the Antichrist in the end of days is going to cry peace and security. It's been being cried. It's UN Resolution 242 and 338. UN Resolution 242 says, the Security Council, expressing its continuing concern with the grave situation in the Middle East, emphasizing the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war and the need to work for a just and lasting peace in which every state in the area can live in security, emphasizing further that all member states in their acceptance of the Charter of the United Nations have undertaken a commitment to act in accordance with Article 2 of the Charter, affirms that the fulfillment of Charter principles requires the establishment of a just and lasting peace in the Middle East and should include the application of the following principles: withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from territories occupied in the recent conflict, and the right to live in peace with secure and recognized borders. The peace process is being negotiated as a peace and security agreement. Following the 1973 Yom Kippur was the passing of UN Resolution 338. And 338 affirmed UN Resolution 242 because it calls upon all parties concerned to start immediately after the ceasefire the implementation of Security Council 242 in all of its parts. Ultimately, there was a peace treaty that was made between Israel and Egypt, March the 26th, 1979. And what I'm going to be showing you in these documents is the peace agreements that Israel has negotiated and is negotiating with her Arab neighbors is all based upon UN Resolutions 242 and 338, peace and security. And so therefore, when they agree to peace with her Arab neighbors, when Israel agrees to a PLO state because it's based upon UN resolutions, the creation of that PLO state then is world law. Do you know there is no world law that says the United States should exist? But there is going to be a world law that says the PLO should exist, because the peace agreement will affirm the UN resolutions, which is world law. Therefore, if you oppose the PLO state, and you will oppose the PLO state if you stand for the covenant that was made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you will be committing a crime against the world. Therefore, anywhere that you are in the world, they are able to come after you if they know that you oppose that PLO state. So standing for the covenant that was made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will possibly, you will be risking your life to believe that. It is no small thing. And so let's look at the Israel and Egypt Peace Treaty of 1979 that was signed at Camp David under the leadership of President Jimmy Carter of the United States and Egyptian President Anwar Sadat. Convinced of the urgent necessity of the establishment of a just, comprehensive, and lasting peace in the Middle East in accordance with Security Council Resolutions 242 and 338, noting that the aforementioned framework as appropriately is intended to constitute a basis for peace not only between Egypt and Israel, but also between Israel and each of its other Arab neighbors, which is prepared to negotiate peace with it on this basis.